Hey everybody, it is Chris Murphy. I'm going to give folks a minute or two to join. I'm just looking on camera, realizing that my pullover here is a little dirty. I was outside playing horse with my 13-year-old, beat him three times in a row. He's getting much better every single time we play, but I still got him right now. And particularly because he can't shoot with his left hand, so I can do a left-handed layup or like a left-handed scoop shot, and he really has no response for that. So it's like only my old man gimmicks and tricks that work on my 13-year-old any longer. Pour yourself a drink. This is I made some fresh squeezed orange juice and grapefruit juice, Tito's vodka, pretty simple. So I want to go over the events that have been developing really, really fast. Trump's plan is real. Right? He has a plan. He is implementing it to convert our democracy to some form of autocracy. And that's the only way that he can get away with the corruption and the thievery. Right? It's not two stories, it's one story. Trump and Musk and their Mar-a-Lago cronies, they are attempting to build a kind of kleptocratic oligarchy. That's a handful of very, very rich people running our government and stealing from us. That's deeply unpopular. Nobody wants that. So the only way you can get away with handing our entire government over to billionaires and allowing those billionaires to steal from us is to try to destroy dissent, to try to destroy the mechanisms of accountability. And so I laid this out today in a pretty long, exhaustive thread on Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter. It's not X. And I wanted to go through it with you because I am just as upset and angry as you are at the unacceptable disappearances that are happening in this country. I think I was one of the first to speak out against the first high-profile disappearance. This was of the student in Colombia who was a Palestinian immigrant who had views that I don't agree with, but nobody gets deported or arrested in this country simply because they have political views that the president disagrees with. This is what happens in tin pot dictatorships. Protesters are disappeared, taken off the streets, simply as a way to try to crush dissent. The case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, equally abhorrent. This was somebody who was given protection to stay in this country by a court. Trump ignored that court order. The Supreme Court weighed in on a 9-0 ruling, said that Abrego Garcia had to come back to the United States. Trump continues to ignore that court decision. This matters for two reasons. One, the president cannot make up the law. The president has to abide by the law as interpreted by the courts of this nation. And the Supreme Court has said 9-0 that the president cannot remove this individual. And so Trump's decision to thumb his nose at the Supreme Court is a signal that he believes he's above the law. And that's a signal that we cannot accept. But today it's a Palestinian student immigrant at Columbia or this El Salvadorian immigrant whose life would be threatened if he was to stay in El Salvador. Tomorrow it's you or me. I don't think that it stops at immigrants or green card holders or people with protected statuses. Once the president of the United States can just disappear somebody, he can come after us as well. Okay, that is a story that I deeply care about and we should all care about. But the reason I wanted to talk to you tonight is that I worry that there's a narrative developing where people believe that until there is this 5-alarm crisis between the Supreme Court and the president, whether or not you believe that the Abrego Garcia case is that 5-alarm fire, that until there is a major decision by the Supreme Court that the president decides to ignore, then our democracy is okay, that everything else is normal politics. And I'm here to tell you tonight that, well, the Abrego Garcia decision is important and we should realize that it is probably not the end. The president is not done. Trump is not done ignoring decisions from district appellate courts or the Supreme Court. his plan to destroy our democracy has nothing to do with a high-stakes confrontation with the Supreme Court. And there is a real risk of people being lulled to sleep, either by waiting for a bigger confrontation than the one that's existing now between Trump and the court, or believing that this confrontation is the only moment to pay attention to. And I know that there are a lot of questions already in this chat about how do we stop him, right? What are the tactics we use? This should not be politics as normal. I'm going to get to that part. I'm not going to leave you with just the crisis. I want to walk you through at the end of this the steps that we need to take, because I want to walk you through his plan to destroy democracy. And then as this question, how are you going to stop the lawlessness? I want to talk you through how we're going to stop the lawlessness, okay? So here's how democracies die. They normally do not die because there is some massive confrontation between the highest appellate court and the President of the United States. They normally don't die in a coup. They normally don't die with the parliament being burned down. Normally, democracies die when they get converted from real democracies to fake democracies. What I mean by that is that elections still happen. The opposition party still exists. They are not destroyed. They are not banned. But what the regime does, what the individual in power does who wants to rule forever, is that they just destroy the mechanisms of accountability enough so that the opposition party never has enough room to breathe, never has enough room to operate. And so it still looks from the outside like you have some form of democracy. There are still elections, but the regime never loses because the truth can never get out. The opposition can never be healthy enough in order to win. That is what Trump is trying to do. He's literally copying the playbook that was laid down for him, decades ago by Putin, but within the last decade by individuals like Viktor Orban in Hungary and Erdogan in Turkey. These are countries that, are democracies in name, but the opposition party never ever wins, at least doesn't win in recent times at the national level. Okay, so how do you do this? Okay, step one is that you've got to weaken the press. You don't have to destroy the free press, but you just have to weaken them so that they are able to tell much less truth. Trump's doing that in a couple ways. First, he's co-opting a lot of the press. He's already got Twitter. He's trying to buy and own TikTok. He's got Bezos and Zuckerberg essentially under his thumb, right? Remember, Bezos decides, hey, I'm not going to run any editorials critical of Donald Trump. I'm not going to endorse in the 2024 race. Why? Because Amazon and affiliated entities are so big that Bezos has got to stay in good graces with Trump. So he doesn't want to criticize him through his news organization channels. So you co-opt as much of the media as you can, and then you intimidate the hell out of the rest. You see Trump doing that with the AP. You see him doing that through his FCC, going after radio stations that are owned by people who are politically opposing him. You don't have to destroy the press. You just have to downgrade the ability of the press to be able to tell the truth by a significant enough amount that ultimately people aren't hearing about the corruption and the thievery like they were. The propaganda is a huge problem, says Will Castro. It's right, because if you have X, Twitter, if Trump gets TikTok and those become organs of the state, then he's got a lane to engage in state-owned media propaganda, right? That's an element of how democracies slide to autocracy as well. The state just gobbles up media, and Trump has that with X, and he wants that with TikTok. Okay, the second group you go after are the lawyers. Lawyers in any democracy are the mechanisms, the individuals by which the rule of law is protected, by which our rights are protected. If our rights are violated, a court can step in, but you need a lawyer as the intermediary between you and the court. What Trump is doing is trying to essentially go law firm by law firm, the biggest law firms in the country, and telling them that if they dare oppose him, he will destroy them. And he has the means to destroy them because the big law firms, they need access to sort of security clearances. Their clients, many of them have federal business. So what Trump is saying is that if you cross me, if you represent any of my political enemies, if you bring lawsuits against me, then I'm just going to cancel all federal business to any of your clients. Now, this is deeply illegal, but these law firms, instead of fighting it, instead of litigating this corruption, are bending the knee. One after another, law firms are essentially saying to Trump, listen, we won't fight you. We won't fight you. We'll lie down, and we will essentially step back in our efforts to protect the rule of law in exchange for your pledge to allow us to stay alive as a business. The third place you need to go are the colleges. Okay, colleges serve these two essential functions. Universities. Universities are both a place that protects the idea of objective truth. You can't have objective truth in a dictatorship. You can't. Because the truth is whatever the regime says. So you can't have an independent truth that somebody else guards, a third party guards. The truth can only be the regime truth. Somebody says it sounds like we already lost. I read that. I saw that. We have not lost. I just want this is dour. This is hard. Okay. So I just want to assure you that there's a part here where we're going to talk about what we're doing and what we're going to do together. Okay. So we have not lost, right? This is what he's doing. This is the plan that he is implementing. He has not won. The mechanisms of accountability have not been destroyed, but you need to be eyes wide open to what's happening. Why I'm telling you this is that I don't want you to think that the only thing that matters is these big fights between the Supreme Court and Trump. That's, I think, what he wants, because he then wants you to be distracted from the stuff he's doing every day to destroy the mechanisms of accountability. Okay, so universities protect objective truth. Trump can't have that. Second, universities are where youth protest happens. Youth protest, the key to any healthy democracy. It's the most viral, the most passionate form of protest. Tiananmen Square, of course, comes out of the Chinese universities. And so Trump has to destroy the universities. So he's doing the same thing with the universities. He's going after them one by one, trying to get them to do the same thing the law firms did. Bend the knee. I'll keep you in business. I'll keep your federal funds flowing, but only if you shut down any discussion of a truth that is independent of the regime, and if you shut down protest against the regime. There's no dictatorship in this world in which there's a healthy, independent university system. There's not. And in virtually every democracy, there is a healthy university system. Now, in this case, we're winning, not losing, because Harvard, to their credit, has helped rally the universities to say, no, we're not going to sign the same kind of loyalty pledges that the law firms did. Now, Columbia did their pledge, but colleges, got together and decided that we're going to fight this. Now, whether they win or not, I don't know. But as I will tell you later, collective action, man, it's the prophylactic. It's the secret sauce. And so these universities getting together and saying, no, we're going to fight you. We're going to go to court. A lot of these universities have big endowments. They can certainly survive a couple of years of federal funding cut off if they need to. The democracy is more important than the universities. And I'm thrilled that they are realizing that in a way that the law firms didn't. Okay, so they've got to go after the universities. Fourth, they got to go after the private sector too. Now, this isn't as important because, even in a democracy, the private sector businesses tend to be kind of co-opted by the political class. But the tariffs, and I've been making this argument for a week, the tariffs don't look like an economic or trade policy. They're really confusing if you try to interpret them as trade policy or economic policy, because they really aren't. They're a political tool. The tariffs are a mechanism to try to compel loyalty from the business community, just like he's using federal student aid funding to compel loyalty from the universities, just like he is using funding for the clients of law firms to compel loyalty from the law firms. What he's saying to businesses is that, I'm going to tax the hell out of your business or your industry unless you come and cut a deal with me. So, it's not shocking that one of the first exemptions to the tariffs was for Apple, was for iPhones. Why? I mean, listen, I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to see the direct line between the $1 million check that Tim Cook the CEO of Apple, cut to Donald Trump, his willingness to stand behind Donald Trump at the inauguration to provide him cover, and the special dispensation that Apple got to bring their iPhones into the country tariff-free. If you sign a political loyalty deal with Trump, you might get some tariff relief. You might be able to outflank your competitors. Trump's doing a different but similar deal with NGOs, with not-for-profit organizations. He's using the federal funding cutoff to try to essentially silence them as well. I'm not going to give you your federal funding unless you shut up and stop opposing me politically. Don't let any of your employees show up to these rallies, or I'm going to cut off your federal funding. Okay? Now, we're the early stages here. Collective action works here as well. The business community could say, fuck off. We're not cutting deals with you on tariffs. The NGOs could do the same thing. And then the fifth key thing that any autocrat does, again, to just try to destroy the mechanisms of accountability enough, degrade them enough so that you still have elections, but they're not fair or free, is you go after the funding sources for the opposition. Okay, you slowly just dry up the ways that the opposition essentially raises money and builds a coherent, viable organization. Now, this is what we're hearing is coming in the next couple weeks. This is sort of the next shoe to drop. We are hearing rumors, there's stories being leaked that Trump is going to essentially come after political organizations that are tax exempt, 501c3s and 4s, that are opposing him or doing work to oppose him or his policies, and either investigate them or threaten to shut them down or just engage in a mass campaign of harassment. And then he may also do this to these things called donor collectives. These are places where donors, both conservative donors and progressive donors, get together and pool their money. I don't quite understand them, so I don't want to pretend like I know them backwards and forwards, but they pool their money and then they use that money in service of certain political goals. Of course, he's threatening to shut down not the ones on the conservative side, only the ones on the progressive side. And then he's going after, it's rumored that he's going to go after one specific mechanism to fund the opposition. That's Act Blue. Many of you make contributions in Act Blue, $3, $5, $10 to candidates you believe in. There are rumors that Trump may try to shut down Act Blue under some ridiculous argument that, Act Blue is platforming terrorist groups or that terrorists are making contributions in Act Blue, whatever. It's fucking bullshit. But he's doing what every autocrat does, which is to try to just squeeze down the ways in which the opposition party or opposition movements are funded. So I'm walking you through this, right? Go after journalists, so just fewer journalists are willing to tell the truth. Go after the lawyers, so fewer lawyers are willing to file suits against the administration or stick up for people's rights. Go after the colleges so that objective truth gets less airing and that there are fewer student protests. Go after the private sector so that they all have to bend the knee to Trump and they can't exercise any independent authority. And go after the funding streams for the opposition so that there's just less capacity inside the political opposition. This isn't new. It's just not new. This is what has happened in country after country that had a healthy or semi-healthy democracy and now doesn't. And I want you to understand this because every single day he doubles down on this strategy. He goes a little bit deeper into every avenue, each one of those 5 avenues. And I want you to understand this because there's a lot of people out there who are like, well, until there's some massive conflict between the president and the Supreme Court, and then our democracy can survive. I sat with one of the Fortune 50 companies, their CEO, a couple weeks ago. I went to see him to say, listen, when is enough? When are you going to step up? And he said, well, I'll step up when there's a real big Supreme Court ruling and Trump ignores it. And I don't think he was talking about a case like Abrego-Garcia. I think he was talking about a case that applies to thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And I just walked away from that meeting thinking, man, folks don't get it. I mean, maybe he was trying not to get it. These corporate CEOs, they're in bed with Trump because it's good for them. I mean, they're not protectors of democracy. I'm not relying on the CEOs of our major companies to come and save us. But I think actually there was a lot of regular people out there who want to maintain our democracy who sort of think the same thing, that until he just gives the middle finger to the Supreme Court, we can manage. We can't. We can't. And he wants to destroy our democracy before next fall. Not before 2028, but before 2026. So we got to save our democracy before then. Okay, so how do we get there? Give us the next steps. We need a place listing all the corruption and the real life consequence stories. This is what Rebecca says here. Okay. By the way, I have a corruption timeline that I will post. Actually, I posted it this morning. So if you go to my long thread, my 12 tweet thread. And by the way, I do all this stuff myself, right? So I mean, those. I was on a train this morning, and I just spent my time sending out this 12 tweet thread. This is obviously me. So when I'm talking to you on social media, you are hearing me, right? This is not a time for bullshit or authenticity. This is a time for people like me who believe this moment is urgent, right? And from the beginning, I have believed this moment is urgent, right? I'm not here to say I told you so, but early on, I saw this plan coming. I wasn't the only one, but if we think that this guy's trying to destroy our democracy, then we got to act like it every single day. Every single day, we have to act with urgency. We got to flood the zone to match him flooding the zone. So that's why I'm here with you tonight at 8:45, laying this out for you. Okay, so I have this corruption timeline that I'm actually in the process of updating, but if you go to my Twitter thread earlier today, you'll see the first 6 weeks of the corruption timeline, but I'm going to update this in real time. Every single time there's a new act of corruption goes on the timeline, we're going to be able to see the whole thing. But what you asked for is the plan. Okay, I'm not going to give you everything, but I want to just at least leave you today with some hope, right? Some avenues by which we know work, because we also have experience from abroad in which democracies have been under threat and they have been saved. There are plenty of examples of places where a set of things happened that allowed for the democracy to persevere. The people met the challenge. Okay, I mentioned maybe the most important, but I just want to talk about it again. It's collective action. It's collective action. What the universities are doing, really the first sign in a long time of true hope for us. Not in a long time. The first sign in a couple of weeks of true hope. Because if he gets able to pick everybody off one by one, every business, every university, every law firm, we're cooked. What the universities are saying is, no, we stand together. You're not going to pick us off. And so we have to support those universities, right? We have to support those universities, and we have to try to get others to engage in the same kind of collective action. So what are other kind of sets of institutions that can do that? City governments, right? We have to create forums where mayors are talking to each other and saying, screw it. He's not going to pick us off one by one. He's not going to force us individually to take ICE agents in to do things that we don't think are legal or moral. We're going to stand together and file lawsuits together. States can do the same thing, right? States can do the same thing. Don't cut individual deals. States should not cut individual deals. Work together. Private companies on the tariffs do the same thing. Don't go in one by one, each company at a time, cutting your own individual deal on tariffs. Work together. NGOs, same thing, right? And in doing this, especially the states working together, that collective action starts to destroy his ability to destroy those institutions of accountability. If the states work together and say, no, we're not going to let you go after all of our not-for-profits. Our not-for-profits should be able to engage in political action on their own time if they want to, right? The CEO of a not-for-profit should be able to be involved in politics, not on the clock, but on his or her own time. And if you go after those nonprofits, if you shut down their funding, then we will file lawsuits on their behalf. We will plug the holes. We will fund them if you won't fund them. And states can make those decisions together. They can strategize together. That is beginning to happen right now. It is beginning to happen right now. That's important as well. So collective action, you're starting to see it happen. When it happens, we need to celebrate it. We need to lift Harvard up. We need to lift Janet Mills in Maine up, who sort of was the first person to say, no, I'm not cutting a deal with you, Donald Trump. I'm doing what I think is right on behalf of the people of Maine. I'm going to fight you. Second, listen, this is the part that's not rocket science, is mobilization. Listen, there is a secret sauce to mobilization. I can't explain it, right? But when you have hundreds of thousands of people turning out for rallies, just history tells you That is the most important thing to stop the corruption. And it's hard to explain A to B to C how it works, but what it does is it just stiffens the spine of people that are close to the regime who want to walk away. So people start leaving the boat when they see mass mobilization on the other side. It sort of speaks to their better angels. It starts to make friends of the regime think, well, man, if he doesn't destroy democracy and this next election actually comes around, I'm going to lose. And so I better step back as well. Mass mobilization, time and time again, slows corruption, slows the descent away from democracy, and sort of previews, and I'll get to this in a minute, previews for the regime that if they keep it up, the protest is going to turn into something more, right? The protest is going to turn into something more. And let me get to that last. The third element here is that leaders have to be engaged in tactical risk-taking. Okay, you do not inspire the public to the kind of mass mobilization that we need unless political leaders are willing to engage in risks themselves. I don't want to rehash every kind of internal fight we've had here. You know where I've been on this stuff. I thought we should have boycotted the State of the Union. None of us should have been there. I certainly would have voted against I did vote against the continuing resolution, but I thought that we should have all voted against the continuing resolution, and we should have said, you know what, we are not going to be complicit in keeping the government open on terms that are written only by the thieves and the corrupt actors. And if the government shuts down, you know what, people will believe it's your fault because you're the ones who have been spending the last 2 months shutting down the government every day. And all we asked was a seat at the table. Yes, it would have been risky to shut down the government. It would have. It would have been risky, impolite, impolitic to not show up at the State of the Union speech. But if the public doesn't see leaders engaging in risks, like the risk Cory Booker took, right? Cory was on the floor for 25 hours. That could have gone terribly. Nobody could have paid attention. He could have petered out after 4 hours. He took a risk. I was pleased to be his wingman, to be on the floor with him for all 25 hours, because when he came to me a few days beforehand and said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to stand on the floor for 25 hours, I need somebody to do it with me, I need somebody to help manage the whole thing, I was like, that's exactly the kind of risk-taking we need. It's the beginning, not the end. But if leaders, senators, congressmen, governors are engaging in risk, the public is more willing to do it as well, right? How can we ask the public to engage in risk? Showing up at these protests, maybe engaging in the next level of action if political leaders aren't willing to do it as well. The last thing I just want to talk about is what happens if this doesn't work, right? What if we engage in collective action, right? The lawyers start doing it, the universities do it successfully, the businesses do it, the states do it, mobilization continues, right? We start having hundreds of thousands of people on a regular basis out, leaders start engaging in more risk. Okay, I will tell you that I think can work, right? I'm not going to say it ends the threat, but that allows us to stay alive to the next election. But if it doesn't work, well, listen, then we are talking about something even riskier, right? You're talking about old-fashioned civil disobedience, right? And we just have to be ready for that. We have to be talking about that right now. I don't think the moment is here yet, because you have to be a true majoritarian institution in order to do it. If you're going to do it, or if you're going to engage in that large scale civil disobedience, and I think you know what I'm talking about, you need to know that everybody's with you, right? But it's going to come sooner than you think. That moment is going to come sooner than you think. We have to be planning and be ready for that, right? We hope we don't have to do it, but you'll know the moment when you see it. And it probably won't be a year from now. That doesn't mean that collective action, mass mobilization, and internal tactical risk-taking, grinding the internal processes to a halt by leaders like me and my colleagues, that can work as a package, right? But if it doesn't, then we have to be ready for the next conversation. Okay, I appreciate y'all. Somebody says scary. Okay, listen. It is scary. I'm not going to tell you it's not scary. But you know what? We're about to celebrate our 250th year as a country. 250 years of a fucking experiment that nobody thought would last 10 years. This idea was just crazy. It was revolutionary. Self-governance, where everybody gets a say in the rules. Nobody lived under that system of government, at least, not since Athens. And we didn't decide to just do self-governance, which was a radical idea in and of itself. We decided to build a melting pot. We decided to build a country over time in which we brought together people from all over the world, different races, different religions, different ethnicities, and say, you know what? We are going to be strong in our differences, but we are also going to be something unique and new called Americans. And literally in the history of the world, never has this lasted for 250 years, a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious democracy. We've never been great at it. We're always getting better. We've made mistakes and left people out and marginalized people, allowed for hatreds and prejudices and animosities to build up from the beginning. But it's an act of perfection. It's an act of self-improvement, and it is worth fighting for. It's scary. What he's doing is insidious. But you know what? Every now and again, the people of this country look around and are like, you know what? Maybe it's just easier if one person is in charge. This democracy thing is really hard. I don't know, my biology tells me to just retreat to my tribe and just hang around people that look like me and sound like me. Maybe I should just do that. Maybe I should view people who are different from me as the enemy. Our biology is naturally attracted to hierarchical political systems. Our biology is naturally antithetical to integration of tribe. And so it shouldn't be shocking that the country every now and again has a little bit of a crisis. And so it's scary. I get it. But we haven't lost. He hasn't won. AOC comes on these live streams with way more people than I probably have and says, there are more of us than are of them. And that is true. People are frustrated with democracy, but they are not ready to give up on it. Okay? They are not ready to give up on it. And so this is an opportunity to beat this guy back, to beat his corruption, his thievery, his destruction of democracy in order to enable the corruption and the thievery, and then to build a better nation, and then to build a better democracy. So understand the story. The case of Kilmar Abrego matters. The confrontation between the Supreme Court and the president matters. But he wants you to think that that's all that matters, because every single day, quietly, maybe not quietly, but methodically, he's destroying the press, the lawyers, the colleges, the private sector, and the funding sources for the opposition. And if we have independent strategies to confront all 5 of those avenues of destruction, and I laid out a lot of those avenues for you today, then we survive. And we survive, we get the chance to continue building this great, tremendous experiment, the United States of America. Thank you guys for everything that you have done for me, for the rest of us who are in this fight. You know I attack this with urgency every single day because I believe in us. I believe in you, and I'll come back here and update you the next time that I think there's something important to say. Thanks, everybody.